Gauravani Pachani Nivasesashini Varipastachari. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Parikamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavascha. Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sadhana Ranatam Vikam Samsadhana. Sadhrekam Sadhvita Parijana Sadhata Pajetam Videda. Shri Radha Krishna Pidam Sadhana Vitam Shri Krishna. Manchakapati Vistaki Pisali Yatapati Tinam Pamayo Vaishnavita. This is January 3rd, 2023 in Auckland, and we're going to be continuing looking at career drama. There's some space there. Please sit where you can see the screen. So yesterday we talked about the 6 prosperity types. Is there anyone here who did the home fund in the book? So what did you think of it?
Personally, I was quite mixed. There were a few things that made clear, but
Of the answers you got? Okay. Did things get clarified as you went through it? So today we're going to be looking at, we're actually doing 2 lessons today in one. So we're going to be moving a little fast. We're doing lessons 2 and 3. And if you would like more information about career drama, we're working on a complete online course and an audio book. We do have an ebook already on Amazon. If you just sign up there, we will send you information. No, you will not get an email confirmation. It's just just my co-author and myself, so we're not that sophisticated. Which will be on the list. Okay, so we're going to be looking at lesson 2, the 4 fields and their qualities. And this is from our area 1, identifying our prosperity type and career field. Principle 1, which we discussed a bit yesterday, connecting our nature with our livelihood. And here we're looking, yesterday we looked at the 6 ways of feeling rich and prosperous. Today we're going to be looking at the more well-known, this does not say, where it's supposed to say, I can't read it any tighter than this. Can you move it? Did you move it at all? Oh, good. All right. So here we're going to be looking at the more well-known, perhaps, this is a good thing and a bad thing, that it's more well-known demarcation of the 4 fields. And so my co-author, Dr. Urmia Datta, her initiated name is Urmia Devi Dasi, but she's not my god sister Rukmini. It's different. She always, Dr. Datta will introduce herself. I'm the fake Rukmini. Can you see the screen? So one of our big questions is, why does Krishna divide all the hundreds of thousands of possible careers into 4 categories? And why these 4 categories? Now we're going to be using, we were using the Sanskrit words for the prosperity types yesterday, but for the fields we're going to use English terms. And I'd like to request all of you to temporarily forget that you know these Sanskrit words. And I would like you to tell your mind that you are not going to translate these into Sanskrit. Why? Because we have so many misconceptions and wrong ideas connected with those Sanskrit words. So I'm going to ask those of you who are serious about understanding this, that for at least 1 week, just forget those. Start with a fresh slate, and after a week, taking these classes and going through the book, then you can bring them back in with a fresh vision. Is that all right? There's some people who really fight me on this. So why did Krishna arrange these 4 fields, which Rukmini and I are calling artistry, ideas, government, and resources? And these English terms are not perfect. I have some people who really argue with me about the English terms. They were the best we could do. We spent a long time trying to figure out what words we would like to use. So these 4 fields always exist in human society. There are always people who do the work of these 4 fields, except in very, very simple society. Some people produce food, some people keep the system functioning and attractive, some educate, and some govern society. The other thing is, if you look at specific careers, the availability of specific careers comes and goes. I mean, there were no software engineers 200 years ago. And while there's still some jobs for blacksmiths, not very many. But these 4 fields are very stable in society. So even if you have to sometimes change jobs, you can still change within your field. But the main reason for these 4 fields, as I hope will become very clear today and tomorrow, is that the dharma of these fields is mutually exclusive. So when we looked at the prosperity types, with the prosperity types, most of us have 2 or 3 types that are very important to us, and one can have those prosperity types in any of these 4 fields, although certain prosperity types naturally suit a particular field. But with the fields, we each will have only 1. And no matter how many times I say that, there'll be people saying, I'm sure I'm in more than 1 field. But if one was in more than 1 field, you would be at war with yourself. Because the essential dharma is mutually exclusive. And again, this will become very clear tomorrow when we look at what happens when we work in the wrong field. What happens when we do work that's different from our dharma. And it is in this area of dharma that our Vedic Shastras, such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, have something to contribute to society that really isn't being contributed by others. So we talked about yesterday how every career has three aspects: the information to do the work, the skills to do the work, and the dharma, or the values of that work. So you can go to so many places in the world and learn the information and the skills that are required for particular jobs. But really, it's only the Vedic literature that's saying, hey, you also have to learn the dharma. So lesson 2 is about defining these 4 fields. I think of that like defining the containers. And lesson 3 is about the temperaments of the people in the field. So the way I'm going to be teaching this, ideally I teach that sequentially. So I spend 2 hours teaching the nature of the fields and another 2 hours teaching the nature of the people in the fields. So instead, I'm going to be with each field, people, field, people, field, people, field, people. All right? This is only the second time I'm doing it this way. So if you don't like it, give me feedback. Or if you like it, give me feedback. So in the first part, when we look at the nature of the field, I'm going to be asking you some perhaps unusual questions. First of all, I'm going to ask you to suggest what careers would be in that field. And then I'm going to ask you what negative perceptions people have of that field, which may seem like a strange question, but it helps bring out how each field has a different dharma from the others. And I'm going to ask you to please participate. With these questions, it's not a test, it's a learning experience, it's not an exam. And wrong answers are as helpful as right answers, because finding out what something is not is just as valuable as finding out what something is. Does that make some sense to you? Did you see the logic of that? If I'm going to be defining something, I'm going to say what fits here. So if someone says, well, this fits here, and I say, no, that doesn't fit here, that gives you just as much useful information as finding out what does fit here. Is that clear? Even in Indonesia and Malaysia, where people are non-participatory, they got able to participate. But the culture there is at least by the second class people. All right, so we're combining lesson 2 with lesson 3, which is our disposition and experience. And this relates to principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. It's one part of that principle. And here we're going to look at the difference between inclination for a field and the expertise of a field. So in the Shastra defines only the dharmic expertise of each field. And so sometimes if we're thinking, do I fit in that field? And we'll read the description of the Shastric expertise and we'll go. But what we're looking for is, do we have the inclination? Does this make sense to everybody? And the slides that are about inclination will have that little mother and baby in the corner. And one of our test readers told us that she felt one of the most valuable parts of our book was making this distinction. That and one of our participants in Bali was saying to me, I think this is too idealistic. And I said, well, it's idealistic if you think that everyone is immediately going to be at the platform of expertise. That's idealistic. What's not idealistic is to be able to identify the inclination of people and then train them in the expertise. Okay, so first let's look at the field of artistry. So the field of artistry provides all the pleasures for human society. Basically, without the workers in this field, life would be just plain rice. You can think of them as providing, metaphorically, all of the salt and the spices in life. Without this field, life is dry.
There's no other field that provides human society with pleasures. So the field of artistry also provides all the functionality of society. Without the workers in this field, nothing works. I once spent some months at a temple where none of the devotees were in this field, and it was not a pleasant place to be. There were wonderful discussions of Shastra, but the toilets didn't work, and the sinks overflowed, and the windows were broken. It was a hard place to function, because it's only this field of artistry that provides the functionality of society and also the beauty of society. So they provide the pleasures, the functioning, and the beauty. In the universal body, they are the legs in the universal form. And I find it fascinating that in Bhagavatam 2:10-25, it's explained that the Lord himself personally supervises this field and the workers in this field. And he gives them shelter under his lotus feet. Because again, without the work of this field, society does not function. In terms of the subtle universal body, this field is the Muladhara chakra and the Svadhisthana chakra. So this field deals with service careers and arts. And I'd like to ask you, what do you think are some careers in this field? And again, wrong answers are just as valuable as right answers. Yes. Carpenters, yes, excellent.
Musicians?
Musicians? Most musicians, not all. The vast majority of musicians, yes.
In service job.
Give me some specific ones. Hospitality, well, okay, say doctors. So most doctors are not in this field. Surgeons and dentists are in this field because they're like plumbers and electricians. Nurses are in this field. There are some nurses nowadays that do work like doctors though. And you said hospitality, but can you be a little bit more specific?
So, what to do with culinary arts?
Okay, chefs, yes. Gardener, yeah. Now, not if you just have a garden in your backyard, because this is about a career. So one thing we might mention is that many of us do things for relaxation, for just our own, because remember, this is the career of pleasure, this is the field of the pleasures of society. So a lot of us, when we want to relax and have recreation, we may do things that look like this field. We might grow a little flower garden. But if someone said, do you want a career as a gardener for other people's gardens, we would say no. Does this make sense? So a number of people say, well, I think I'm in the field of artistry because, I love refinishing furniture. And I say, is that just a hobby that you do like for your own family? Or would you want to do that 8 hours a day with other people's furniture? So this is the demarcation. But again, because this is the field of pleasure and beauty, so many of us have hobbies in this field. So yeah, a gardener, if you're working in other people's gardens. Yes, okay. Some other ideas of
Interior
careers?
decorators? Interior decorators?
Yes, interior decorators, yes. Drivers, yes. So if you're a taxi driver, a bus driver, or an airplane pilot, which is like a big flying bus. Most teachers not. Now, if you're just teaching people how to bake a cake or how to fix their carburetor, yes, but the vast majority of teachers are not in this field.
Dancers?
Huh?
Dancers?
Most dancers, but not all.
Engineers.
All engineers, yes.
Farmers?
If you own a farm, no. If you're a farm worker, if you just go on the farm, on someone else's farm and pick the oranges, yes. Movie stars, yes, most. Few actors are not, but the vast majority of actors, yes, whether they're stars or not.
Sports people?
Yes, professional athletes. Now here again, you can look at hobbies. So you might like to, like, you have a little golf putting green out there. So very little. So you might like to, have golf as a hobby, but if that's your livelihood, and you can think about the difference. So if I'm a professional golfer, then what am I trying to bring to human society? I'm trying to bring pleasure and beauty to society. Right? But if I'm just, playing some golf in the afternoon for relaxation, I'm not doing that for others' enjoyment. I'm doing that just for me to get some recreation. Okay, some other ideas?
Lawyers,
Lawyers, no, that's another field. Huh? Cleaners, yes. What negative things do people often think about this field? Low class, I think this book is low class. Low income, which, I always hear that and it always amuses me because I know, at least in America, many plumbers make more money than many college professors. So many jobs in the trades are actually much higher earning than jobs that are considered to be of higher status. Yeah, but we tend to think of these as sort of low status or low paying jobs, which is not, it's true, some of them, not by any means all of them. Yes. And I find it, as I ask for each of the prejudices, what I'm bringing out there is how the Dharma is different. Do you follow? Yes. Especially those who are not in that field will tend to see the Dharma of that field in a pejorative way. I find it quite fascinating. All right, now let's look at the inclination of the people. What's the mentality of the people who want to work in this field? So if we think about, again, we have the little baby here, beginning inclination. So, if you like to play with beauty and function, making fine art, doing services, exercising a craft, love of a medium, using a tool or using your body as a tool, people who love to take things apart and put them back together. And this happiness of, I made that, I fixed that, I cleaned that. Now, again, we all get that kind of satisfaction, but this is especially where it pervades your life. Making things, fixing things, cleaning things, or being the thing. And what's really the essence of the mentality of the people who are inclined towards this field is this service attitude. My own conviction is that such is the reason why the Lord gives special protection to this field, and the people in this field are under the shelter of his feet. Because the mood in this field is the closest to Bhakti. This became very clear to me once in St. Petersburg. We were staying at the home of some devotees. They were out of town. They had just given us their home. I was there with one of my granddaughters. And on the walls were about 15 original oil paint. There's probably some room. I don't want you to have to stand up for that one. Can we make some room for this gentleman again? There is some room in the front here.
You can bring some cheese here.
Well, I don't know if chairs they'll block the people like that. We do have one chair there if someone wants to be both in the front. So I was looking at these paintings, original oil paintings by this Russian devotee, Priya, and I had a number of her pictures as electronic files. And my daughter really likes her work, and she had a lot of her prints on her wall. But the originals were a completely different thing. This is an artist who used a lot of texture in her work. You've all seen oil paintings where the artist puts kind of blobs of paint that they create a textured effect. And she also mixed a lot of sparkles with her paint. And the effect of the originals was just astonishing. And I thought, who would paint all these pictures to hang in someone else's house? Yeah, you paint a picture like that, but all you get to see is the print. The print, you're getting maximum 60% of the effect. because of the way she did these paintings. And the joy is, my painting hangs in someone else's house. You know, I'm fixing the pipes in someone else's house. This is really the essence of bhakti. My pleasure is Krishna's pleasure. It's not my pleasure directly, as Prabhupada would say, it's through Krishna. So this is the only field where that's a very intense and pervading mentality of service. So that's probably going to show up to some extent, even in an inclination stage. And again, you will not find this present in the other three fields. The Shastra says that the dharmic expertise of this field, so again, this is not necessarily visible in just those who have an inclination, but the dharmic expertise of this field is honesty. Now, this is a very particular type of honesty. So, for example, when you hire a plumber, they only have one head. Oh, these are lovely. These lovely flowers. Gardenias, huh?
Yeah,
Are they growing here?
yeah, camellias.
In the summer, huh? Of course, I've just been having spent a week, about 9 days in Indonesia, a week in Malaysia. I'm totally spoiled right now. In terms of flowers, everywhere is tropical, highly fragrant flowers. So this honesty in the field of artistry is a very important quality of the dharmic expertise of this field. Like if you hire a plumber, is it important that he's honest? Right? But what kind of honesty is that? I mean, let's contrast this with the business. So let's say you go into a business and you're going to buy some pipe, and they're selling it for $200. Well, you know that they didn't pay $200 for it, right? And they're not going to tell you how much they paid for it. They're not going to tell you their profit markup. But at least still there, at least most places, that if you hire a plumber, they're saying this much for the pipe and this much for my labor. And you're understanding that what they're charging you for the pipe is what they paid for. In fact, very often when I work with people like this, they'll actually give you the receipts for how much they spent to buy the materials. So they're selling you back the materials at cost for your job, and then they're charging you separately for the labor. And you expect them to have this kind of honesty, which is not what you expect in business. Everybody clear on that? Yeah. And you expect them to be very honest about the qualities, like, okay, there's 3 different kinds of pipe, and this is used for this, and this is used for this, and this is, or there's this kind of wood, and this will have this quality, and this one. You don't expect them to be advertising, again, like in a business. So a business is going to advertise, right? We saw on the main road outside of our Mayapur temple all these advertisements for steel pipe for construction. My grandson was saying, oh, it's because there's so much construction going on around here. And in a lot of these advertisements, they show a particularly handsome man with a particularly gorgeous woman. And I said to my grandson, buy this pipe and you will get a beautiful romantic partner. So you don't expect your plumber to do that. Do you follow? You don't expect your plumber to say, this pipe will get you the woman of your dreams, the man of your dreams. But you expect that in the business. So it's this kind of honesty that we expect from the field of artistry. And it's actually that kind of honesty that makes us think about the people of this field of being simplistic and not so sophisticated, isn't it? Yes. The other thing that the Shastra points out, this is particularly in Bhagavatam 11:9-13, that's a hallmark of the dharmic expertise of this field, is a real absorption in the craft. Now, anyone in any field can be fully absorbed in their craft, but the physical details of what they're doing. And the Bhagavatam gives an example of an arrow maker who was so absorbed in making the arrow that he wasn't aware of the king going past with his large retinue, which presumably would be both very colorful and very noisy. But he didn't even have an awareness of it because he was so absorbed. And again, this may be the reason why we tend to do artistry field type work as recreation, because it's so easy to become absorbed and get into a state of flow. So the love of one's craft and the satisfaction of giving a needed, essential service. Now, I'm really hoping that you all remember these demarcations for tomorrow's class, where we talk about what happens when you go in the wrong field. And those of you who are online also, and who will come to tomorrow's class. Because then we're going to be comparing and contrasting the fields. So the field of artistry is a field of satisfaction. It's a field of honesty. It's a field of service. It's a field where the workers are essentially satisfied people. They're not ambitious people. What brings them satisfaction in life, if they have a decent place to live, good food to eat, loving partner, loving family, decent clothes to wear, and if they're treated with dignity and paid a fair price for their work. Then also, and I think this is very important for those of us, whether or not our work is in this field, when we're dealing with others who work in artistry, what really motivates the people in this field is pleasing their customer or client. And I've seen many, many times people, if they hire someone in artistry or they're dealing with someone in artistry, they forget that. They think all I have to do is pay them. And often they try to pay them not fairly. Yeah? People will often try to pay people in artistry less than what they're, and that really hurts people in this field. Because they're not ambitious and they're honest and they're actually, if they have the dharmic expertise, they're actually honestly charging a fair price. And when people try to undercut them, it gives them pain. And what they're looking for is the satisfaction of the client or the customer. You know, if someone's cleaning your house just to pay them is not enough. But to say, wow, I really like the job you did on that, ornate work above the door. You really see how you got it cleaned, and that sink in the bathroom is sparkling. And that's what makes it, that's the food of the people in the field of artistry. That is what they're looking for. Are you happy? Did you enjoy the meal that I cooked? That's what's giving them actual satisfaction. Another good example of the honesty of the people in this field. In North Carolina, I'm the Tulsi Pujari, and I take care of the temple greenhouse of Tulsi's. And we needed a new heater. And it was an expensive heater. It was a $2,500 US dollar heater. And the HVAC man, heating and cooling man, he said, so should I bill you or the temple? And I said, you should bill me because I collect donations from our congregation for the heater. And he said, okay, you know what? I'll donate $100 too. That's the natural, that's like the epitome of the dharma of this field. And he did a whole bunch because we wanted a heater that didn't use electricity. So if we had a power outage, that Tulsi wouldn't die. So he wanted a propane heater that could be outside vented, didn't use any electricity. It does use a couple of AA batteries for the thermostat. And he had to do extensive research, and he didn't charge me for that. He's like, I want to make sure you get a high quality product that's really going to meet your needs. And then he would come by, is it working nicely? Is it doing the job? Is there anything more yet that you need? I'm giving that, thank you. Yeah, it's really working. Our plants are healthy. Is just as important to people in artistry as getting paid. Because they need to live, but they're not working for the money. They're working for the beauty of the craft. They're working for the support. They're working for the pleasure of the people that they are serving. And those who have the dharmic expertise of this field are willing to sacrifice by resisting pressure for artificially increased profits or expediency that would interfere with the integrity and the quality of their work. So if someone comes along and says, you could make more money faster by sacrificing quality and integrity, those who have dharmic expertise in this field are going to say, no. I'd rather work slower and get paid less and keep the integrity of the goods or the services that I'm providing society. One of the questions they asked about their work, is it supportive and is it beautiful? Is it supportive and is it beautiful? So this is a field of satisfaction, honesty, service, providing beauty, support, and functionality to the world. Does anyone have any questions or comments or discussions about the field of artistry? Yes.
Your physical strength doesn't match your mental inclination. Because a lot of these services are quite physical. So what if you have a mind that is attracted to these kind of things, but not the strength of the body to match it?
Okay, well, we did talk about the prosperity types. Now let's say that virya is not so important to you. There are certainly many jobs in this field that do not involve physicality. You know, receptionists, for example, secretaries aren't. There's so many careers that are in artistry that don't require a lot of physical exertion. I mean, one of the nice things about understanding the fields is that each field has a very broad area of careers within. And if for whatever reason you can't continue to work in a particular specific job, you can switch to another job in the same field. And if you understand the prosperity types, you can switch to another job that has your same prosperity types. The prosperity types give you specificity of career within the field. What you don't want to do is go to another field. Again, we'll talk about that much more in depth tomorrow. But yes, the fields are so broad and they encompass so many different types of careers, but they all share the same dharma. Excellent question. Anyone else? Any questions about artistry?
You mentioned that these four fields are mutually exclusive.
Yes.
So can somebody go from artistry to other fields?
You can, but you'll cause havoc to yourself and to society. But that we'll discuss tomorrow. That will be much clearer to you. Now, if you're working in artistry but you don't belong there, then you need to get out of there. That's another thing. So if you see my natural dharma is government, but I'm working in an artistry job, you need to change and go into the right place. It's like if somehow you were a heart muscle and you kind of migrated to the lungs, you know, you got to get back to the.
Would a teacher be in this field?
Could be. Depends what they're doing. The vast majority of jobs with teaching are not in this field. Most teachers' aides that I've seen are practically doing the work of teachers, so I'd say no. But there might be some circumstance where the teacher's aide is really just an assistant and not actually helping with the teacher. In that case, yes. If they're just putting out the supplies and putting away the supplies and doing that kind of thing. Anything else? Yes.
What about engineering field?
Engineering is providing for beauty and function in society and serving clients and customers. So all the varieties of engineering are in this. And that's also interesting because we talked about how there's prejudices about this field being low class, but there are many, many people in many careers who are very highly educated and very highly intelligent. So there are many careers in artistry that require high degrees of intelligence and often high degrees of education.
you mentioned on the qualities, there's like, it's like a satisfaction, the honest, it's more like qualities of sattva. Is it related?
It's interesting that you talk about the gunas. We'll be talking about the gunas on, when is the last class? Saturday. On Saturday, we'll be talking about the gunas. So I don't want to get into that too deeply right now. But Krishna is very clear in the Bhagavad Gita, work according to your nature, but rise above the gunas. So what causes our nature may have been our association with the gunas in previous lives. It's almost impossible to say what causes us to have particular inclinations in this life. How much of it are we born with? How much of it comes from our early childhood? You know, what's the nature and nurture? I think only God can figure that out. No human being has perfectly been able to figure that out. But everyone is expected, if we're doing real career dharma, everyone is expected to rise above the gunas. We don't want to work in the modes of nature. Krishna never says to Arjuna, okay, you're going out and fighting, make sure you're really in Rajaguna. Did you hear say that? He said, you fight, but you be above the gunas. Am I correct? Did I get it right? I didn't get introduced, but I've taught the whole Bhakti Shastri course at least 15 times, and Bhagavad Gita more than that. And I don't think that Krishna says to Arjuna, do your work in the gunas. I don't think he says anywhere that anyone should do their work in the gunas. And I don't think that's anywhere in the Bhagavatam. Do your natural work, but rise above the gunas. Don't be influenced by this. Work transcendentally. Have I got it right? I mean, I'll admit if I got it wrong. Because this is a very good point. Thank you. Okay, let's go into the field of government. So as soon as you have any society beyond just the most simplistic, you have to have some means of organization. You have to have some way of making sure that people get what they need, and there's fairness, there's proper distribution, right? There's following of law. Now, government management is different from business management. If you're managing business, you have a much more narrower field of interest of management. You follow? If you're managing a society, you're managing a much wider field of interest. Now, this field is quite abstract. We should also say the field of artistry tends to be very concrete. Like a good table is a good table. I mean, this one's a little wobbly, but it's still a table. Is it a table? Is it not a table? Is very concrete. Is it a good government? Is it not a good government? Is much more of an abstract concept. There's varieties of good governments, and there's varieties of ways to become good at government. So protection from internal threats, external threats, creation and maintenance of rules and order, providing large-scale services and infrastructure. Now, this field doesn't just apply to people who work for political governments. So in Shastra, the people in this field maintain themselves either through rent as a landlord or through taxes, and not through charity. But in our modern society, we do have many people doing the work of the field of government through charitable organizations, or through some kind of non-political government organization. I mean, we have some that are sort of borderline, like maybe NATO, United Nations, Interpol, but we also have charitable organizations that do government type work. They make sure there's roads and there's schools and there's hospitals and where people get food. You follow what I'm saying? They're providing protection and doing that type of work. And Srila Prabhupada puts landlords in this field. It's as if their apartment building was a small kingdom. You know, and they're collecting rent, and they're again providing the kinds of services on a very small scale that government provides. They're providing the parking lot, they're making sure people have electricity and water, and maybe the playground for kids, and things of that nature. They're taking care of people. Now, this field provides the leadership for society in general. However, there are leaders in all four fields. There are leaders in artistry. I was just talking to a devotee who told me how she was describing her work, and she's definitely a leader in artistry. I met another devotee, I think it was in Dubai, who's a leader in artistry. I said, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a project manager. I said, what kind of projects do you manage? He said, well, when a business gets a new building or renovates a building, I manage the teams. I manage the interior decorating team. I manage the plumbing team, the electrical team. You know, and I'm managing the managers and coordinating everything. And I'm saying, do you decide how things go, or are you pleasing your client? I said, no, we're pleasing the client. So that's a leader and a manager in artistry. And there can be leaders in business that are not government. There can be leaders of schools that are not government. But the people leading society in general are in the field of government. Can you see the difference? And you need some leaders in each field that have the dharma of that field. Now, with the universal body, they're the arms, and they're providing the care. These people are like the big parents of society. There's something similar between government and artistry. Is both in government and artistry, you're serving people directly. But in government, you're doing it kind of in Vatsalyavam, and in artistry, you're doing it kind of in Dasyavam. You know, in artistry, you're serving as an assistant, and in government, you're serving more like a parent. So these are the arms in the universal body and the heart, the anahata, of care, taking care of people. Okay? Some careers that are in this field. No, not bureaucrats. Police officers. Bureaucrats are in artistry. So if you have bureaucrats who are assisting government, they're in artistry assisting government. That's something we'll touch upon tomorrow. When someone with a mentality of artistry does government work, they make government work into a bureaucracy, which it shouldn't be. Government work should be flexible and working more on principles. What was some other police officers? Yes? Others?
Soldiers.
Soldiers. So anyone in the military, now not just the chefs in the military, but anyone in any branch of the military. Yeah.
Diplomats.
Diplomats. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, could you be specific? Your local MP, what else? The Prime Minister, the President, who else? Huh? The mayor of the city, yeah? No. Yes? Ambassadors, yes. Judiciary system, some specifics. Like who? Lawyers, yes.
Magistrates.
Magistrates, yes. Advocates, yes. Judges, yes. Not the clerk in the courtroom. The clerk in the courtroom is in artistry assisting government. You follow? Any others? Again, getting wrong answers is just as valuable as right ones. Yes, security guards. Yes, excellent. Firefighter. Firefighters epitomize the mood of this field, which we'll discuss in a moment. So if you really want to get like what career just personifies the mood of this field, it would be a firefighter. other prejudices or criticisms people have about this field? Excellent. Now that comes from the fact that this is a field not of honesty but of diplomacy. And if you don't have diplomacy in this field, you're going to start a war. Yeah? If you bring people who are from the honest-minded fields, which are artistry and ideas, and work and have them do government work, they can start wars. Because they don't know how to be diplomatic. Yes. But people look at that from the outside and see, oh, they're wars. Yes, excellent. What are some other criticisms of this? Out to get power hungry, basically. Yes. Because this is a field of protection. And in order to protect people, you need to have power. So often people say, oh, they're power hungry. They're controllers. I'm trying to be controlled. It's nothing. So let's now look at the inclination of people in the field of government. So this is, we're looking now at beginning inclination, not dharmic expertise. So this is people who also want to make people happy, like in artistry, but with the mood more of a parent. These are people who are really interested in rules and fairness and justice and ethics. Many times these people fight or argue very easily, especially on principle. They also tend to have a tough skin. In other words, they're not so affected by criticism. They may have a tendency toward leadership. They may have a take charge kind of mentality. They often are very goal-oriented, often very decisive and determined. They tend to be natural systems thinkers that can sort of understand the flow and the movements of people. So this is the inclination. Now we're going to look at the dharmic expertise. So those who have dharmic expertise can intuitively sense the emerging trends and needs throughout whatever system they govern, and be able to work how to meet those needs, whether it's the apartment that they rent out, the blocks they patrol as a police officer, the grocery store that they check out as a security person. My granddaughter's husband, my grandson-in-law, has worked security. He's an ex-Marine, and he's worked as security guards in shops. And he was giving a class to the devotees about what he called situational awareness. And he talked about how in a grocery store, he was trying to figure out who the potential thieves were. And he would start noticing certain types of behavior and certain types of even facial expressions were more indicative of someone who was likely to steal. So the expertise of people in the field of government is having this sense of people and their movement. They can sense the system. They know how and where to move resources to increase the happiness and prosperity of those that they govern. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about the dharmic expertise of people in this field: heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, which is very important, generosity. This will also be something, keep this in mind for tomorrow's class, that these people tend to be very generous. So people in government, they will stockpile things for emergencies. But then when there's an emergency, do they keep anything? If they have dharmic expertise, what do they give away everything? There's so many examples like this in the Shastra. So during the good times, they're going to be stockpiling goods and keeping a surplus. And as soon as there's a problem, they'll empty out their storehouses to give to everyone. And this is a particular feature of this field of government. And again, leadership, but I want to emphasize again, just because you're a leader doesn't mean you're in the field of government. It's like if it's raining, there's got to be clouds. But if there's clouds, it doesn't have to be raining. If you're in the field of government, to some extent, you're a leader of society. Even if you're just a social worker, making sure that, you know, the law is giving out the proper goods to people who need it. But if you're a leader, you may not be in the field of government. So if you're in the field of government, you display some leadership qualities, But if you display some leadership qualities, that doesn't necessarily mean you're in the field of government. Can you understand? Yeah. If it's raining, there has to be clouds, but if there's clouds, not necessarily raining. All right, the Bhagavatam also says dynamic power, determination, heroism, tolerance, generosity, great endeavor, steadiness. Now, this courage in battle is exemplified by Arjuna's son Abhimanyu. So Manyu means danger and Abhi means toward. People who run towards danger. I was teaching this, one devotee came up to me afterwards and said, I can understand I wasn't in this field when I was, as a youth, engaged in a protest march, and when the police officers came out to break us up, I ran the other direction as fast as I could. He said, and that's when I could intuitively understand, this is not my dharma. A building's on fire, everybody goes out of the building, the firefighters go into the building. Right, there's some crazy criminal with a gun shooting in the building, and the police officers go in, and everybody else goes out. So this is the only field where it's part of their essential dharmic makeup to run towards danger. Now, all of us, if we're walking by the water and we see a kid drowning, we'll jump in and hopefully and save the kid. But that's not our basic livelihood mentality. You follow the difference? And the people in this field are actually energized by crisis. Now, interestingly enough, they generally try to avoid a crisis. They're trying to keep peace and keep law. So if someone doesn't have dharmic expertise, if they just have the inclination, they may create crises. Yeah? But when someone's trained in the dharmic expertise of this field, they know how to avoid crises. They act as peacemakers. But if a crisis can't be avoided, they're energized by engineering. Do you all follow? Yes? And again, this natural leadership, they inspire others. So they show their strength to protect innocent people, but they're willing to fight if necessary and to lead people. And they collect resources for redistribution. They're very generous. And they're particularly generous for social justice. This will again be important tomorrow and looking at the differences in the dharma between the fields. So they're looking at social justice. Is there inequality? Is there a lack of justice? Let me distribute goods to those who need them. Some of the people in this field are very studious, but their desire for learning and study tends to be honed in on their particular areas, like history and politics and law and martial arts and things of that nature, how to protect the weak. They tend to be more practical in their studies. And as Srila Prabhupada often points out, the dharmic expertise is not just to protect the people in their area, but also the land and the animals, particularly the non-agricultural land and animals. So like my grandson asked me about this man who spends his time creating wildlife reserves for endangered species. And he's doing that not as part of a political government, but he's doing it as part of a charity. And he said, is he in this field? I said, definitely. You know, he's working at protecting the citizens, in that case, the animal citizens of that country. Now, those who have dharmic expertise in government are willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of justice, being an honorable person, and the public interest. And of course, we have many examples in the Shastra of people in this field who sacrifice everything for the public interest and for justice. And the questions they ask about their work are, is it just and is it honorable? So this is an expansive field. Unlike the field of artistry, the field of artistry is very concrete. It's a field of satisfaction. It's a field of honesty. The field of government is a very expansive field. It's the second most abstract field, and it's a field of diplomacy. So as an expansive field, these people want to protect more and more and more and more. They want to expand their areas of protection. They want to expand their areas of care. Okay, questions or comments about the field of government?
Do environmentalists up in this field?
What do they do?
Protecting wildlife.
If they're actually out there doing the protection work, yes. If they're just researching and publishing papers on it, no. If, on the weekends they just join a protest march, then that's not their livelihood at all. But if they're actively involved in protecting the environment, yes. Making policies or enforcing those policies. If they're going out and making sure the laws are actually being applied to the land and the air and the water. And they may be working for the government to do that, or they may be working outside of the government, doing work that the political government should be doing. A lot of these NGOs have sprung up to fill the gap in what political governments should be doing.
There's a couple of online questions.
Oh, great.
Is Yasha prosperity type an integral part of artistry?
Is Yasha an integral part of artistry? Well, it's the field of government that creates Yasha for the society in general, but any of the prosperity types can be enjoyed in any of the 4 fields.
The other one is
But the field of government is the main creator of Yasha for the society because it's creating community. Yeah, another one?
Hare Krishna, I have a question regarding the field of artistry. What if doing what we love as a full-time job kills our natural passion, or if we become resentful of our craft and possibly our self and gifts? Is it because I'm working in the modern of passion rather than goodness and service attitude?
Okay, so if we're not happy in our work, we can have several causes. First of all, I could be in the wrong field, which we'll again talk about more tomorrow. Second of all, I could be in the right field, but I'm not getting the right prosperity tips. Another problem is I could be in the right field with the right prosperity types, but I'm not cherishing them, which we'll talk about more on Saturday. I'm messing up the integrity of my field. It's like you could be in your home, but you don't clean it. You throw garbage everywhere. And so you're not going to get much pleasure out of your home if it's full of stuff and garbage, even though it's your home. Another possibility is, you're influenced by the roads. So we're going to go over all the 9 principles of Dharma on Saturday, and any of them that you mess up, if you're not giving any charity, you're not cherishing your fields, or you're completely rolling out on the roads, could be a source of the problem. The main problems that we're seeing in society is people are in the wrong field, or they're in the right field, but they're not in the right field Dharma. They're in the field of their inclinations, but they've not been trained in the Dharma. Those are the 2 big problems that we see in society. Is that it?
That's it.
Anybody else? Anything on government? Yes.
So the government, mostly we're talking about the dharmic and the government. And my question, I'm trying to understand, when the government has some particular reservations over a part of the society, special reservation for that particular demographic. Like here we have people are concerned about morals, why should they have space? That doesn't country with the Dharma, was mostly somebody was getting the preferential treatment.
Well, what they're trying to do is remedy a past injustice. But we'll talk about this on Saturday. One of the aspects of cherishing the field of government is making sure that everyone gets equal justice. So you don't want to give more justice to rich people than the poor people, which is often what happens. Rich people can afford better lawyers and so forth, and the justice that they get is different. Right? A rich person's kid gets kidnapped, it's all over the news, and the detectives run around finding the kidnapper, and a poor person's kid gets kidnapped, and they say all into it. So, but that can also happen with previous disadvantaged groups, that they get a disproportionate share of justice. However, I can understand the mentality of trying to put things back in balance if things were previously out of balance. I can understand that that's a valid motivation. Whether or not it should be done in the way it's being done is a deeper discussion that we can get into tonight. But that concept you know, that I haven't been feeding you for the past 2 weeks, so now I'm gonna give you more food than I'm gonna give other people. So you can get your health back. That makes some sense. You follow? But the idea of the Dharma of this field is that there should be equal justice, and the people working in this field should not have any special interests at all. There should be no favoritism to any particular group. Okay, any other points on this government?
Inclination
Okay.
work in a certain field. This no relationship with the guna they have.
Okay, so to what extent are the gunas causative for inclination, is your question? So this is something Rukmini and I really put a lot of energy into. Srila Prabhupada often talks about the gunas as being causative for the field. And when we were looking at Shastra in our previous acharyas, we found particularly in Bhagavad Gita 1831, there's a lot of commentaries in that regard. However, if you're going to look at this life, and you're going to look at the gunas as causative for the fields in this life, you're going to run into a lot of problems. First of all, very few of us are influenced by only one of the gunas, or only one combination. You may be very influenced by Sattva guna at 8 in the morning and by Tama guna at 8 o'clock at night. And you're the same person. And we know in Bhagavad Gita 14:22-25, Prabhupada says that all the gunas are going to be affecting all of us at different times, even when we're liberated. They're going to be going through our body and mind. So what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I should be in the field of government, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, I should be in the field of artistry? That's obviously absurd. And even if you want to try to figure out what your prominent guna is, I think that's going to be difficult. Another thing is that it's very, very clear that we're supposed to rise above the gunas and continue to work in our natural world. This is the overriding, often repeated, heavily emphasized message of our Shastra. Do your natural work and rise above the gunas. Now, if we're going to take the gunas as causative, then you'd say that once you rise above the gunas, you have no work to do in the world. Now, actually, Krishna says that. He says, if you rise above the gunas, you have no need to work in the world. And he says, you have no need to stop working in the world. So you have no reason to work, and you have no reason to stop work, and you have no need to depend on any other living being. But you still work according to your nature. Now, as an allegory, I see this as we have this particular, what Prabhupada calls psychophysical nature. How do I have it? Why do I have this psychophysical nature and not another one? I don't know. I really don't know. And I don't know if that's something that's very profitable to spend a whole lot of time figuring out. Like, do I have this because I have some mission in this world and Krishna's given me the right psychophysical nature for that mission? Do I have it because of all the Maya I was in the gunas in my previous life and all my stupid materialistic desires that have given me this particular nature? Is there maybe a little bit of both in there? Do I have it because of something of my family and the mentality of my parents when I was conceived and when I was in the womb and when I was born? I don't know. I really don't know. And at this point, it's not really relevant anymore. It's like we have a particular psychophysical nature, like you have a particular kind of vehicle. Somebody has a bicycle, somebody has a car, somebody has a scooter, somebody has a boat, somebody has a plane. And even when you become transcendental, the funny thing is you still got the bicycle. It's not that when you become transcendental, your bicycle turns into a car. Now, there's this one interesting purport where Prabhupada says that if someone is fully Krishna conscious, they can do anything. And he gives the example of Parasuram and Vishwamitra. So, we have 3 things to consider there. Anybody here willing to say, I am fully Krishna conscious? Okay, we have that problem. And then Parasuram is God. Anybody? God? And Vishwamitra changed his field, but it took him 60,000 years. And he had a lot of problems along the way. So I consider these sort of statements true but irrelevant. Like Prabhupada says, you can become Krishna conscious in a moment. I believe that that is a true statement. But is that statement relevant to any of us? If it's a moment, folks, it's really been a very long moment. You know, Prabhupada will say things like immediately. And in Nectar Devotion, he says these statements are true, but they're not applicable to everyone. So if you're fully, totally, absolutely transcendental, yes, you have no reason to work according to your nature, but you have no reason to not work according to your nature. You could just become an avaduta wandering around without a career. And that would be just fine. Or like that python Prahlad Maharaj ran into, would just lay down and just whatever food came along. But is that practical for any of us? And is that what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do? Is that what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted us to do? So it's not that meaningful. So to ask what's the cause of our particular nature, I don't know. Definitely the gunas have, unless completely your psychophysical nature is the Lord empowering you for a particular mission, which may be the case for some of us, then the gunas have some involvement.
Most of the time, nature and we can't say that nature is because of it.
They may be, but if you're going to look at this moment in time, that's not going to be. You understand the distinction?
I'm trying to understand guna karma of others.
So we have associated with different gunas in our many previous lives. Because of that association with the gunas and because of our desire, we have this particular psychophysical nature right now. If you change the gunas you're associated with, is your psychophysical nature in this life going to radically change? And the answer is no. So let's say you have a nature to be in government and you really cultivate tamaguni, you're just going to be a terrible worker in government. You're not going to get the nature of another field. You're just going to be a corrupt worker in your field. Now, even if you're really into Rajaguna, that's going to be a problem. People in Rajaguna are greedy, they're envious. Do you want greedy, envious people in government? I don't think so. So it's not that Krishna doesn't say, Arjuna, you have work in government, why don't you get into Rajaguna? That's not what he says. Even Sattva is a problem. Again, we'll talk about this on Saturday. Sattva is not pure, it's still egotistical. Sattva is still all about what makes me happy. I feel happy by being so balanced. And often people who are really in Sattva, they don't care what happens to society. Oh, just put Vena, Anga's left, just put Vena on the throne. Let's go back to the forest. Bye-bye. We're not going to get involved. Oh, Vena's stopping our sacrifices? All right, then we'll get them. Okay, let's go down. Kill him, let's go back to our house. Bye-bye, society. So even Sattva it's a contamination. You should try doing it, Roger. What does Prabhupada say? Make the best use of the bad. If I have a material body, 99% certain it's because I am in nonsense. And I'm attracted to the modes of material nature, probably. Unless you're here as a Chakradesh. Now, for some of us, it may be a mix. I mean, some of us, if we've done bhakti in our previous lives, our psychophysical nature might be a mix of our material desires and Krishna's mission for us. That is also possible. Well, I have some desire to act in some way. Krishna says, this is what I need. Krishna will empower you with that kind of shakti. That is also possible. It's not that everybody in a Hare Krishna movement is in their particular nature only and solely because of their association with the three rules of Krishna. That would not be the true story. Is that right? But yeah, you can't look at someone now and say, well, you look to me like you're in Tamagun, so therefore you should do this kind of work. Would that work? Do you want your electrician to be in Tamil? That sounds kind of dangerous to me. Do you want your actor to be in Tamil? Do you want your musicians to be in Tamil? You ever heard Tamil musicians? So, a few times I went to introduce Mommy's Polish tour to Woodstock, and they take the theater around the festival. And as we were going around, there were these people wearing all black, and they were playing music. Really isn't the right descriptor. It sounded like animals growling. It was just awful. Those are Tamil musicians. Is that what we want? So if we have a perfect society, do we want musicians? Do we want them to be in Tamil? Do we want them growling like wolves? And it really sounds like, I was like, whoa. So if we have a whole society of devotees, we're going Okay, so we're going to go to the field of resources. So the field of resources is about expanding wealth and profit. This, like government, is an expansive field. So the people in this field is about how to use resources effectively with the distribution of profits. So this is between government and artistry in terms of being abstract. So artistry is very concrete field, government is more abstract, and resources is somewhat in the middle. Again, what makes a good business is somewhat abstract. Like, do you solve problems by executive decisions or changing the rules? Do you have collaboration? And if you just move from like Sweden to Germany, those questions will be answered very differently. How do you run a good business? What is a good business? What is a good business culture? How do you become a good business person? So this field of resources is providing all of the food, all the raw materials for food, construction, clothing, medicines. They're in one sense generating all the wealth in society. And because of that, they're also the primary employers. So there are people in artistry who employ others. Obviously, government employs others and ideas employs others. But your main employers are going to be in the field of resources. They're also paying the bulk of the taxes, and they're giving the bulk of the charity. So generally, the arts exist because of the generosity of people in the field of resources. In the universal body, they are the stomach. Prabhupada talks about how metaphorically, he will compare Krishna to the stomach. He'll say, just like if you serve Krishna, you please everyone. So if you please the stomach, then everything is distributed throughout the body. And the other day I was hearing Prabhupada say how the different parts of the body went into rebellion and decided they weren't going to please the stomach anymore. They said, what do you do? We do all the work. And then everybody else all the other parts of the body became weak. So it's the field of resources that's providing all the vigor for society. And therefore it's the stomach. And in the subtle body, it is the Manipuri chakra. So this is again a field of expansion. People who have, the Bhagavatam says the people in this field are always thirsty. So they want to create wealth for society. This again is the field of wealth creation for society. all the raw materials for food, for construction, for clothing, and for medicines. All right, some careers that are in this field. Farmers, yes. Bankers, yes.
Finance minister.
Now, a finance minister in the government is in government assisting resources.
Miners?
Hmm?
Miners?
If they own the mine, yes. If they're working in the mine, they're in artistry, but owning the mine, yes.
Entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurs, yes.
Accountants?
If they're like financial managers, yes. If they're just accountants and they're as assistants, then they're probably in artistry. Depends on the scope of their work. And in India, a lot of CPAs are actually in the field of government. Like in India, a lot of CPAs do work like a lawyer.
Like chartered accountants.
Yeah, the chartered accountants in India do lawyer type work, government type work.
CEO of a company?
A CEO of a company, yes.
Manufacturers.
Hmm?
Manufacturing company. People who
Manufacturers, yes.
Investors.
Like investment bankers, yes. Financial advisors, not the tellers in the bank. The tellers in the bank are in artistry. But your financial advisors, your investment bankers, or stockbrokers.
What about salesperson?
Most salespersons are in the field of resources.
car dealers.
Hmm?
Car dealers.
Yes, anything where you're trying to expand wealth for society. Expand resources for society. There's kind of this subtle difference between artistry and resources like that. So, for example, there's this, in Govardhan town where I often stay, so there's this one man who repairs flip-flops. You call them flip-flops? So his shop consists of a piece of cardboard and a little box of tools. And he sets his own hours, and he sets his own rates, he works whenever he wants, and he repairs flip-flops. So he's an artistry. He's making the world beautiful and functional. He's not interested in profit. He's not interested in expansion of wealth. Now, just a block away, there's these people who have these street carts, and they sell all kinds of things. And they're not selling the things that they produce. And they're getting things from all over India. They might even get some things from foreign countries. And they're really noticing, okay, when do the locals come? When do the foreigners come? When do the pilgrims come? What do they buy at this time? What do they buy at this time? What are my competitors selling? So that, even though it's a very small business, it's a resource. But let's say you just make pottery and you have a little shop just selling your own pots. That's still an artistry. Then you're like the flip-flop repair. No? Can you understand kind of the difference? Okay. So what are the prejudices that people tend to have about this field? Greedy. And it's very interesting because, as we'll see with the temperament of this field, the people in this field must be profit-minded in order to serve society. And this profit-minded and expansion nature of the people in this field looks like greediness to those outside. So let's look at the inclination for this field. So people who have the inclination may love to work with money or with natural resources. They like to stay continually on top of ways to make money. So like our youngest son, Keshava, when he was 7 years old, he already had a business selling school supplies to our Gurukul kids. My husband would help him buy like the pencils and the notebooks and the rulers online, and then, or through physical catalogs, and then he would sell them to the students for a profit, right? And he would just pay my husband back the wholesale cost and keep the profit. By the time he was 9, he started a prasadam business. And in his early 20s, he became the CEO of a big prasadam, actually. So he went, at 9-year-old, he was like, squeezing orange juice and making orange juice popsicles. And by the time he was in his 20s, he was actually running he was the CEO of a big prasadam bar business. But this inclination, now, a lot of times children want to make money, want to do a little something to make money because money represents freedom. But we're talking about someone who really, this is what they're thinking about. They're thinking about spreading wealth in society and this desire to increase. So these people tend to be very ambitious. They want to increase their own wealth. They're very rarely satisfied with their success, always thinking how to improve, how to expand. They have a drive to achieve their goals. They tend to be very active people. So the inclination, they have some intuitive grasp of the flow of resources. Okay, going on to the dharmic expertise of this field. So these people are systems thinkers, but this is confined to their own system, their own area of resources. Like people in government or systems thinkers, they're looking at the flow of people. And these people in resources are systems people, but in regard to their particular area. Does that make sense? Like if they're working in a copper mine, they'll be very aware of, okay, who's using copper for what? What are the different prices of copper? But they might not be aware of the whole flows in human society. But they can know what are their competitors in the marketplace. Like I remember going with, my father was also very much in this field. And, going to the stores and looking at the placement of products. And, Keisha would say, okay, look, they're putting our bars all the way in the back there, and they're putting our competitors' bars over here. And people are more interested in this kind of thing, more interested in this kind of thing. We're going to have this. There's a very aware of those sort of flows. So the flows they understand and grasp are of natural resources and money, and they want to redirect those flows to themselves in order to increase them. So the mood of this field is to put your own oxygen mask on first, which is very different from the Abhimanyu mood. Because the people in this field understand that unless I make a profit, I cannot feed society. They know I've got to make sure first that I'm earning wealth. So Prabhupada will talk about how they can make money when things are going up and they can make money when things are going down. They can somewhat change even like what they're selling or what services they're giving to respond to changes in the society. Their business can be robust and it can take care of the ups and downs. It's got to. Otherwise, when things are going down, people will starve. They won't have housing. They won't have food. They know that you have to save the seeds, some of the seeds from the harvest. You can't sell all of them. You have to have seeds to replant for next year, for the next growing season. Do you see how this is different from government? In government, they're going to save, but when there's a need, they're going to distribute everything. In resources, they never do that. They'll never do that. They're always going to make sure that things are coming back into the business, that you have some seeds saved that you can replant. Because they know, and this way this field is, it appears to be unsentimental. Now, don't you care about people? Why don't you lower your prices? Why don't you give more? Okay, but I'll do that, and then my business will fail, and then all my employees will be out of a job, and all the people that I serve will no longer get any clothing. You follow? Yes? And the people who have dharmic expertise in this field, they're willing to sacrifice for the sake of preserving the flow of resources and for maintaining high ethical standards in their livelihood. And the main questions they ask about at their work are, is it sustainable and is it regenerative? Now, this does not just apply to the environment, but is the business itself sustainable and regenerative? Which means, again, am I putting enough profits back into the business to keep it active? And am I able to respond to the environment and the needs of people to make sure that it keeps going? Okay, questions, comments about the field of resources, the nature of this field.
Also, a fine line between greed and ambition. It's good to be ambitious to earn and feed society, but
Well, it was very interesting how when Keishaba, he was in his early, maybe mid-20s, and he said to me, Mata, by the time I was like 20, 21, he said, I had produced more wealth for society than you and father spent on raising me. And it really struck me because I don't measure my own value like that. I don't measure my contribution to society like that. I don't have that mentality. But the mentality of someone who has the dharma of this field is I am increasing the wealth for society and I'm giving more than what I take. I am providing a needed service for society, but I can't do that unless I have some sustainable regenerative base. I'm thinking also my daughter used to make kefir, which is kind of like yogurt. And whenever you make it, you have to save some for your next batch. You know, or people who make sourdough bread or something like that, you always have to save some so you can keep it going. So that looks like greed if you think that everything should be distributed. Because the people who are not in this field, artistry, government, and ideas people, they don't do that. And they look at it and say, you're greedy. Why are you keeping that? Now, if people have the inclination for this field, but not the dharma, then yes, they're greedy. You follow? If they're not trained in the dharma. I mean, after all these fields exist and people with all these natures exist. Why did Prabhupada say we needed to teach this stuff? Because either people are in the wrong place or they're in the right place adharmically. They're in the place where they have an inclination. You know, if you have an inclination to play the piano, but you've never been trained. Or when my grandson plays the saxophone. So when he was first starting to learn, I was visiting him. And my kid said, Mata, his teacher's here, you should go in your room and close your door. So when you just have, you understand, you all know the saxophones? So if with the inclination without the expertise, it was a disturbance. And if he went to play in the performance without any training and expertise, it would be a disturbance. So this resources like government is expensive, and also resources like government is diplomatic. Prabhupada says in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita purport that lying is compulsory for people in this field. And he talks about how in government people have to be diplomatic, and in resources they have to lie. If you went in a store and they said, you know, this is our profit margin, this is what we paid for it, would you buy anything in that store? No way. I'm selling you this pipe for $200, but I paid $100 for it. Any more questions, comments about resources?
Interesting comment we always hear is resources when you make a profit. You're a profit. Oh, he's a fantastic businessman.
Yeah.
But when somebody in the government makes a profit.
It's corruption. It's corruption. Yeah, that's one of the things we'll talk about tomorrow. If you have a mentality of resources and you work in government, you're going to pollute government. And if you have a mentality of government and you work in resources, you're going to pollute resources too, in a different way. Wrong dharma. You're going to say, oh, that person's poor, I'll just give it away. And then there's no more profit in it. And I saw this. I saw, you know, a leader of this community, and there was a prasadam business that worked for the community, and he forced all the profits to go to maintaining the temple, and the business failed. Yeah.
Seems like someone in this field would need a certain mentality, also faith and trust, because sometimes perhaps what they're doing or what they're thinking of offering, they may not know exactly that this will work. So they have to have some faith to say, or it'll work out and it'll be fine, there's some level of respect.
Yes, there's risk taking. Especially your government and resources people are both, they tend to be more risk taking. Government more so because they'll run into a fire. I mean, not without protective gear, but they'll still run into a fire. But they're taking a risk for some purpose. In resources, they're taking the risk in order to feed and clothe society, and in government, they're taking the risk to protect that. Yes,
So like a manager of a temple, would they be managing?
it depends. If the temple is just a place of worship and education, and there's some renunciates that live there, no. Then it's leadership in the field of ideas. If the temple is a community, if you've got a bunch of families living there, you've got business, if it's like a little village, then yes, that job is in the field of government. But if you're just running a temple or a school, if it's just education and worship, then that's not working in the field of government. Then that's Aishwarya in ideas. And hopefully you're not running a temple as a business. So we have a problem if somebody with a mentality of resources is running a temple, either if it's just a temple or if it's a community, you're gonna have a problem.
Business being sustainable and regenerative is subject to the awareness of their business at that particular time.
Yes, but somebody who's really expert in this dharma, I mean, not absolutely, there's, the karma and the Krishna factors, but someone who's expert in this dharma knows how to have a sustainable regenerative business in all different sorts of situations. One of the stories I heard growing up was of my Uncle Max, my great Uncle Max, and my great Aunt Edith, after whom I was named. And I never met them, they passed away before this one. And he owned some chain of businesses. And in the Great Depression, he lost everything. And he went to his wife, said, "We lost everything." And she said, "Oh, yeah." She said, "I've been squirreling away money." And she had $50,000, which in those days was a tremendous amount of money. And they were able to start everything all over again and actually become more successful than they had become before. And Prabhupada tells a story we have in our book about a man who came from another man asking for charity. And the man who was being asked said, "Oh, are you a businessman?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Then don't ask me for charity. You can be able to get your own business." He said, "How?" He said, "Do you see that dead mouse? That's your business." And from that dead mouse, we have a whole story to tell you. Okay. Anything else on resources? Okay, let's go to the field of ideas. So the field of ideas gives wisdom, guidance, the truth to society, counseling, training, ritual, worship. Now there are intelligent people in all four fields. Are there highly intelligent engineers? Yes. Are there highly intelligent musicians? Yes. Are there highly intelligent business people? Definitely. Are there highly intelligent people in politics and government and law? Definitely. So intelligence is throughout all four fields, but the vast majority of intellectuals are in the field of ideas. Now, not everyone in the field of ideas is an intellectual. We have the clouds and rain thing again. If it's raining, there's clouds, but if there's clouds, it may not be rain. If you are an intellectual, most likely you belong in the field of ideas. However, there are many jobs in the field of ideas that are not done by intellectuals. Is that clear? Yes. Can't say, it's not that everyone in the field of ideas is intellectual, but the vast majority of society's intellectuals are in the field of ideas. Now, generally in the field of ideas, people teach through language, sometimes through mathematics. Sometimes they're teaching truth and wisdom through mathematics, and sometimes through the fine arts. We have Sarasvati as the goddess of both holy arts. And so some musicians, some artists, some sculptors, some painters, some actors are in the field of ideas. They're using a different medium. So you think about, if a musician is singing songs like, my baby left me and I'm crying, that's artistry. Right? But if someone is singing songs about wisdom and philosophy, and the aesthetics, the pleasure is secondary. Do you follow? Like I'm using aesthetics in my teaching. I'm using this. Why am I using the PowerPoint, which takes me a lot of time to put together? Because it helps you to understand and remember what I'm teaching. My purpose in doing this is not for the pleasure of the beauty of the pictures. Do you follow what I'm saying? Is that a clear distinction? Yes? So someone could put together a PowerPoint simply to give you an aesthetically pleasing experience. Or we could put it together as part of transmitting wisdom. So there are some, it's a minority, but there are some people in the fine arts who are actually in the field of arts. So these people are the heads, these people are the heads of society. And by the way, anyone who thinks that we only want people in the field of ideas, it would be a pretty strange society if we had a bunch of floating heads. On the subtle level, they are the Visuddha chakra, which is here, and the Agya. So what are some careers in the field of ideas? Counselors, yes. Although social workers who just act to make sure that people get their rights under the law are in government. But yes, counselors. Teachers, almost all teachers, unless they're teaching you like how to ice a cake, or just like the Bhagavatam says, Arjuna taught Satyaki some of the secrets of fighting, but he still stayed in the field of government. Do you follow? And teaching wasn't Arjuna's main occupation. Scientists, yes.
Motivational speakers.
Most, yes.
Music directors. Music directors.
Generally, music directors are leaders in the field of artistry.
Writers.
Depends what you write. So if you're going to write romance novels, detective novels, or even nonfiction, if you're going to write the biography of, I don't know, Elizabeth Taylor, or who's somebody still, Tom Cruise, if you're going to write the biography of Tom Cruise, that's in artistry. Or if you work for a newspaper and you do the gossip column, that's in artistry. But if you are writing books on philosophy or truth, if you're a war correspondent in Ukraine or Israel, that's ideas.
For example, a sports journalist would be under
Sports journalist is an artist. Researcher, yes.
IT people, IT people, programmers,
IT people are usually engineers.
programmers.
Programmers are usually, we call them software engineers. They're generally providing function and beauty in society and trying to please a customer or client. Now, you might use programming as a scientific researcher. So my son Keshav, who's in resources, he's also an expert programmer. And he is a business consultant. He sets up SAP software for business at this point. And he uses his programming skills in order to make the business more financially successful, but he doesn't work as a programmer per se. Depends what they're writing. Poets depends. Now, are you just writing poetry about the beauty of the apple blossoms and the flowing of the river, and spring has come. That's artistry. If you're writing poetry about God, if you're writing poetry about philosophy, if you're writing poetry about truth, then that's artistry.
Spiritual leaders.
Now, interesting is spiritual leaders. So priests are in ideas. If that's your livelihood. Guru is not a livelihood. And anyone in any of the four fields can be a guru. Just like my godbrother Jayananda. Right, where Prabhupada said we should celebrate his disappearance day like any of the, of course he didn't act as a Diksha guru in Prabhupada's places. But what field did he work in? Artistry. So you can work in any of the fields and be a spiritual leader. But if being a priest is your occupation, then you're in the field of ideas. Everyone is meant to preach Krishna consciousness. Everyone is meant to share Krishna consciousness in some way or another.
Psychologists.
Yes, excellent.
Philosophers.
Yes, very good.
What about psychology as a business?
Oh, that's a corruption. If you're trying to make a profit out of psychology, you want your patients to remain sick. Do you follow? If people are full-time pujaris as their livelihood also, even though they may not be actively teaching. Any other? Astrologers, yes. Not if they just put your stuff into a computer and just give you the printout.
How about doctors?
Yes, doctors belong here, except for surgeons and dentists.
Pharmaceuticals?
That depends. Are you in the pharmacy just simply, you're just fulfilling the doctor's thing as an assistant? If you're a pharmaceutical researcher, definitely. If you're giving advice and guidance and help to people, then yes. Some kind of wisdom and training and understanding. Professors, yes. Okay. What is the criticism of this field? Ambitiousness. Yes, yes. Irrelevant. Idealistic, irrelevant. Useless. Well, this field appears to be, in many respects, the most useless.
The most?
Huh? Assumptions? That would be a corruption. There's another big criticism of this, of the people in this field.
Cheaters.
Well, anybody can be a cheater. Generally, people more assume that the two expansive fields, government and resources, are cheaters, but anyone can be a cheater.
What?
Usually, if people think there's a mentality of government resources or artists, it's working. What's the other main criticism of the field like this? So it's useless, it's just theoretical,
Not practical.
not practical. What's the other one? Yeah, but that's a corruption. And that generally, again, has to do with people that don't belong in that field.
Bit abstract,
Hmm?
quite abstract.
It is the most abstract, and therefore it appears to people who are not in that field to be useless. A lot of the work in the field of ideas, like, why are you researching? Who cares what the black bears eat in the Yukon? Why are you bothering? Or even, you know, when I wanted to produce curriculum for the children of the movement, it was only Auckland that said, it was only Kalasambara and Prana who said, you can stay here and do international curriculum work and we'll take care of you. And you don't have to do local service. Every other temple said, if you want to stay here, you have to do local service. I wouldn't have the time and space to produce curriculum if I have to be, you know, on the altar You know? So why? Because they think the work is useless. There's another, come on, there's one more. What's the criticism of people in the field of ideas? Huh? We shouldn't pay for it, that's a useless thing, yeah.
Expensive.
Yeah, that's again, you get into the useless thing, it is expensive.
Proud.
Thank you, there you go. Proud, yes, the other criticism of this field is that these people are proud that they're elitists. And that's because a lot of the work that's done in this field, that people in general don't understand what it's mean, why it's being done. Okay. Let's go on to the nature of the people in this field. So inclination, the inclination for this field.
Before you go, there's a question on the internet. How is that if a singer is singing about wisdom is in ideas, yet a scientist just by being a scientist makes him a person in ideas, even though his knowledge might be polluting the world?
Okay, so what we just looked at was the container. Now we're going to look at the nature of the people. Scientific work is by its nature in the field of ideas. We just looked at the container. Now we're going to look at the nature of the people who belong in that container. Good question. Okay, so the people who have inclination for this field, but maybe not dharmic expertise, people who love to play with language or mathematics in order to pursue truth. Different from people who want to play with mathematics to make money, you follow? They want to play with mathematics, they want to play with language to find truth. They tend to be insatiably curious. They want to know what's true, what's real. They're often good at breaking up ideas and projects into smaller components. They can see the pattern in ideas, relationships, and system. They often like to teach others. They often love to research and to study and to think. Okay, dharmic expertise. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, religiousness, and Bhagavatam says, satisfaction, this is another field of satisfaction. The field of artistry is a field of satisfaction, and the field of ideas is a field of satisfaction. But it's a different kind of satisfaction. The satisfaction in the field of artistry is what? Satisfaction with what?
Pleasing.
Others. Giving joy to others and simple creature comforts. If you've got a Prabhupada talks about this quite a lot. If you have a comfortable home and you have good food to eat and nice clothes to wear, and you know your romantic partner loves you and you're treated with dignity, you're satisfied. You're not ambitious. You're like, I need to be more. In ideas, people's satisfaction comes from a very active mental and intellectual life. And ideas people may not even care so much about what do people think of me, am I pleasing anybody, do I have a nice place to sleep? But they're also intrinsically satisfied and not ambitious people. Also, Bhagavatam says simple straightforwardness. So this is also a field of honesty. But it's a different kind of honesty than the field of artistry. Artistry, they're going to say, I bought the pipe for $100 and I'm charging you $100 and then I'm charging you $300 for labor. And here's the receipt for the pipe. And by the way, I don't think that's the best quality pipe. You could have gotten a better quality pipe. In the field of ideas, it's simple straightforwardness, whether you like it or not. Excuse me, you have cancer, you have to stop smoking. That's not trying to please the customer, you follow? Hey, that was just your false ego, cut it out. You're not trying to please the customer. You're telling the truth as it is. This was something that I really struggled with accepting in myself. I always thought it was a problem how straightforward I am. And it's like, wait, no, I should be more diplomatic. And in studying this, I'm like, actually it's the quality I need in this field to be straightforward. Also, mercy, that will be important tomorrow. That mercy is one of the qualities of dharmic expertise in this field. Okay, so expertise in ideas may be dedicated to assisting others mentally and emotionally by understanding life and how things work. May be dedicated to understanding themselves. Some of these people are not teachers. Some of these people are interested more in meditation and worship and research and study, seeking higher states of clarity. They often like to collect knowledge, understand it, use it, and share it. And sometimes these people live in their heads and they don't know what's going on. Often very involved in writing and speaking. Now, some of the people in this field study very minute areas.
Specialized.
You know, like what did the black bears eat at this river in the Yukon? Or, you know, what was Kavi Kanakur's poetry? And some are studying broader areas of knowledge. Now, like those in government and resources, people in ideas are also systems thinkers. But in government and resources, they're looking at the systems to be able to control them. Systems of people or systems of resources and ideas, they're trying to understand them so they can guide others. They're not trying to control them. And people in ideas often feel that they're kind of separate from the rest of the world, which is what gives this critique of being elitist or being proud. It's kind of like, you know, like the sports commentators, they're just watching and commenting on the game and not playing it. So that's kind of a metaphor for a lot of ideas people. They feel like I'm not really part of life. I'm just sort of watching it, commenting on it and analyzing it. And they're often satisfied with a very, very simple life. Again, this is a field of satisfaction. They're not getting interested in the business, but it says, we said a different kind of satisfaction from artistry. It's a satisfaction from having mental and intellectual stimulation rather than having basic creature comforts and dignity of work. Now, like the field of resources, because of this sort of detachment, these people often are seen as unsentimental. It's something that resources and ideas have in common. You know, do you really care about people? Yes, and in ideas, it's because of this detachment. People in ideas who have dharmic expertise will sacrifice for the sake of objective truth. So in each field, those with dharmic expertise will sacrifice for the integrity of their field. And their questions they ask about their work are, is it true and is it wise? So in artistry, they ask, anybody remember, is it beautiful and is it supportive, functional, supportive? Yes. In resources, they're asking, is it sustainable and regenerative? In government, they're asking, is it just and is it honorable? And in ideas, they're asking, is it true and is it wise? Now, let's say you care about justice and honor, but you don't want to work for it 8 to 10 hours a day. You know, you might care about beauty and support, but you're not going to spend all your time giving that to society. Or you may care about truth and wisdom, but that's not going to be the main thing in the work. So this is your primary drivers. Okay, any questions about field ideas?
I guess what I picked up the ideas, you said the person may not be appear to be
On what? I don't know.
yeah.
I'm guessing what that could possibly be.
Insensitive.
But I'll try to repeat. The resources, if the person is unattached or uncaring, word would be I want
Like kind of unsentimental. Yeah.
unsentimental, uncaring. I think that it is a big differentiation here. Because if the resource person is uncaring means, hey, what price I charge? Can be $10. But here the uncaring is I don't care because he's in a different field of mind. He's thinking of different. He's thinking of.
But that's what it looks like to others.
Yes.
In other words, it's an appearance. So both the resources and ideas people care, but it may not look like that. Like artistry and government, you really look like, you're right there. Yeah, you're right there. You're changing the bedclothes on the patients in the hospital. You're giving them their meal. You're decorating their home in artistry. And in government, you're making sure that people get justice, the bad guys are locked up, right? That there's nice parks for the children. But in resources, people say, oh, you just worry about yourself. You don't care. It's not so obvious to people that the resources person is, if they're dharmic, are deeply invested in making sure the society has everything that they need. And the ideas person, they're often not interacting much with society socially. They're often not very interested in that. And they're speaking heavy truths that people don't necessarily want to hear. And so someone will say, well, you don't really care. Why do you really care? But they're doing that for the benefit of society. And without that detachment, they can't benefit society. They won't have the objectivity to benefit society. But it may look like that. It may look like that. It's an uncaring or unsentimental is probably a more neutral way of saying it. Any other questions, comments, not feeling ideas? Good. That's exactly what we want to have. Okay. Are there any people outside the fields? So Urmia and I have decided to use a biological term, commensals, these little fish around the shell for commensals. Commensals literally mean they eat at the same table, but they don't help and they don't harm. They're not beneficials, they're not parasites. So in every human society, there are some people who don't have careers. So of course, people who are disabled or handicapped in some way don't work, and people who are retired don't work. So and then you have students also don't have a career. So people who are preparing for their career as students, people who are retired from their career, people who are at the end of life, people who can't work for some reason. Now there are some people who remain as kind of students their whole life. So like one devotee that I was seeing in your good friend. So she's a lawyer, she has a Juris Doctorate degree, and she has like 3 master's degrees and I think 2 PhDs, she's in her 30s. And she said, Urmia, I think I'm gonna have to work now. I said, why is that? She said, well, my father passed away and he was the one maintaining me while I was just studying eternally. I had a cousin like that too. He was just getting one degree after another, and his parents maintained him. Now, sometimes these people may work odd jobs just to make a little cash. They're often nomadic. So they often don't have a family. And they're like seekers. They're like perpetual seekers in society. And they don't really contribute that much to society, but nor do they harm society. Okay. So here we're going to look again. Krishna has this nice first chapter about Rashastam. And we're going to look very briefly because I am putting a 4-hour class into 2 hours now. We're going to look very, very briefly at this idea that our nature cannot be repressed. And therefore, ideally, one should figure out one's nature in childhood and early adolescence. The research shows that by age 13, our basic values can be discerned. Now, my own experience as a teacher of many, many children is that in many cases it can be discerned before that, but certainly by the time we're 13. And in a society that was run properly, the parents, the teachers would help a young person understand what is their nature. Like Prabhupada says in the 2nd canto, that Gurukul was for training in higher values of life, along with specific training for a livelihood. Now, nowadays, a lot of people don't think about this till they're like 20 or 22. Now, because our nature cannot be repressed, as Krishna says, our basic inclination is going to come out at a reasonably young age. And if we haven't been properly trained in the dharma of our nature, it may come out in ways that are disturbing. For example, I mean, I was talking about how our son Keishore was running businesses at the young age. And we encouraged him in that. But some people might have said, oh, why are you interested in money? Yeah. Or like one very famous guy we talk about in the book. So he was always getting in trouble from school. Stop that! Being sent to the principal's office over and over again. When he was 10 years old, one of his teachers told him to stay after class. Oh, boy, I'm in trouble. His teacher says, no, you're not in trouble. I want to give you something. And what did his teacher give him? Drums. He became actually world famous from them. True story. Another true story. A little girl during school, she could never sit still. She was always jumping out of her seat, running out of the classroom. And finally it got so bad, there was a meeting of the teachers and the principal and the parents and the counselor. And they said, you know, maybe she has ADHD, maybe we need to medicate her. And one of the teachers said, let me try something. He put her in a room and he turned on some music. I just left her and they just watched. And she got up and started dancing. He said, she's not sick, she's a dancer. And she actually became not only a dancer, but she became one of the lead choreographers for a lot of the Broadway musicals. So there's one devotee kid I know that was always getting in trouble when he was growing up. Stop minding other people's business. Mind your own business. Mind your own business. His parents, his teachers, his siblings, mind your own business. Mind your own business. And he was always saying, that's not fair. They're not following you. Why aren't they following the rules? And mind your own business. And then when he was like 18, he went on the Polish tour with Urmia Devi. He was the second in charge of security for the whole tour, and they said he was one of the best leaders. When I was teaching this at one Gurukul, one of the teenagers said to me, you know, I'm always getting in trouble for thinking. And so I asked his mother, I said, is that true? And she said, no. I said, well, what happened? She said, we could be sitting around and I'm saying, what are you doing? I'm thinking. We'll do something practical. He's not starting university at age 14, right? Why do you think? Right, or kids that got into trouble for taking things apart and putting things back together. I should just take my phone. Or once I was teaching a Shastra class with some devotees, and there were some little kids there, like 3, 4, 5 years old. A bunch of little kids. And there was one of the little girls, not more than 4 years old, and she was managing the other kids. She was telling them, I could see the whole time, she's telling them where to go and what to do. And so afterwards I said, who's this child's parents? And the parents come up. I said, your child is a natural leader. He said, we're always telling her not to be so bossy. I said, what do you guys do? They were each top government leaders as their occupations, and they each held top leadership positions in ISKCON. Now, what do you think I got in trouble for when I was 3 years old in preschool? And I won't be offended, I'm asking the questions. Teaching. Who do you think I was teaching? Nope. I was teaching the teachers. So the teachers went to my parents and said, your child is really a problem. Instead of playing with the other kids, she's coming up to us and saying, see that child over there? You know, we should make sure that she plays with this thing over there. And it's interesting, one of the main things I've done as service is training teachers. I regularly go to schools. The first book I wrote was a 500-page book on how to run a school and how to teach things. But when I was growing up, I thought being a teacher was a bad thing. You know, my mother especially would say, stop teaching. And so, you know, when I was 13, if someone had said, what are you good at? Would I have said teaching? Would I have said teaching? No, I thought it was a problem that I needed to do. Now, I am fortunate that I was very much encouraged in study and research and public speaking and debate. So I was in the public speaking and debate club and wrote a gazillion research papers. That was something my parents did really encourage me. My teachers really did encourage me. But I was very much, I mean, it wasn't until I was 24 when I met my god sister, Georgina Marini, she trained me first in the Dharma of teaching, and then the craft of teaching. So if we ask people, what are you good at? You know, and we'll talk about this again tomorrow, that you may be good in the information and craft of something that's not your job. Okay, so we are a little bit over our 2-hour mark. And this is a weeknight, so I want to be respectful. I'm sure a lot of you are not on vacation. And we don't have another class tomorrow. Tomorrow's class will be about going into the wrong field. So we'll look a little bit at the personal harm of going into the wrong field. We'll look at 3 benefits of being in the right field on a personal spiritual level, and 3 harms on a personal spiritual level of being in the wrong field. Then we will look at every possible combination, every possible crossing of fields. Like an ideas person working in artistry, or a government person working in ideas, in every possible way that anybody could be in the wrong field. And we'll look at what harm that does to society. So that was a real eye-opener for Rukmini and myself. Once we looked at the harm of crossing fields, it really became clear to us why Krishna is emphasizing so much that we should do our own work. Hey, if somebody has a very quick point, we could do it now, otherwise I'd like to end. Yes?
If you're good at, 2 or 3 things from childhood, then how do you decide which one you should follow?
Well, you also want to look at prosperity terms. So, let's say that you're a natural leader, but you could be a leader in any of the 4 fields, for example. Or let's say you really love knowledge, but you could be a knowledge collector in any of the 4 fields. But you want to look at what is, and not just what you're good at. I think a lot of us are good at things outside of our field, as far as the information and the craft of it. But what we're not going to be good at is the dharma of something else. Am I making any kind of sense of it? I'm going to be incapable of imitating the dharma of the fields that are not mine. I just won't be able to do it. My own dharma will manifest. Krishna says it can't be replaced. My own dharma will manifest, and it doesn't belong there. So when you say what you're good at, you want to look not just at information and craft. You want to look at the prosperity types, not just the fields. And you don't want to look at just information and craft. What are my values that's driving me, that's pushing me? What do I want to do? Do I want to make the world beautiful and be supportive? Or do I want to make the world sustainably, regeneratively, prosperous? Or do I want to have law and order and justice and morals and ethics in the world? Or do I want to have truth and wisdom in the world? What's my drive? Am I expansive or am I satisfied? Am I more into honesty or diplomacy? That's not going to go away. You're not going to get a diplomatic person to be able to speak straightforwardly all the time. They just won't be able to do it. And you're not going to get a straightforward person to be diplomatic. You're not going to get a naturally satisfied person to be expansive. And you're not going to get an expansive person to just be satisfied. You don't want people in resources just to be satisfied. Then they'll just grow enough corn for their family. So look, you want to look at these sort of basic values.
Can astrology help define your intonation?
We actually have a section where we talk about this kind of thing. And I very much believe in astrology, but I don't believe in a lot of astrologers. I think of when Sanatana Goswami had those 8 gold coins and the innkeeper's astrologer. I mean, it wasn't like he said, "Hey, can I read your palm?" You ever had your palm? It wasn't like that. It was just a cursory glance, and he could tell something like that. Not just, oh, he has money, but how much money he had. If you could find an astrologer that good, then yeah, sure, go for it. But otherwise, please. Many times astrologers will tell you your field just by looking at what we call the kutas, the nakshatra of the moon. That's, no, please, don't do that. Don't put your, birth data into a computer program and it will work. But as one of the things, personality tests, astrology is useful. What I'm seeing more and more and more as I'm teaching this to some of the people all over the world is that because it's so much what my values, my authentic values and my authentic dharma is, it's a really personal thing that's gained through good introspection, often helped by a guide. Now, what I find is often just teaching these few classes, the 6 prosperity types, these 2 lessons, and then tomorrow's, just by doing those 4, sometimes just by doing one of them, people just like, I get it. I mean, I taught just the overview, which I'm going to teach on Saturday, and I've got 2 hours for it. I taught that in 45 minutes at Lloyd's Bank in London to about 30 people, not diverse. And 3 of them came up to me afterwards and said, now I know what I need to do. So sometimes very quickly and intuitively a person can understand. Other times I find it's good, I can consult with people. Sometimes it's a 3 to 5 minute consultation. Well, I don't know if I'm this or that, and I just ask a few questions and they're like, oh, I know. Sometimes it's a 2-hour consultation. 2 hours tends to be for the older people. Who did a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and tried this and that, and they were in the wrong field because that's what their parents told them they had to do. But what you want is for the person to see, that's right. So can these things help? Yes. Okay, so for those of you who have the book, there's some nice things you can do to follow up here. So Appendix A, which is on page 499, is a lesson in both the richness and the 6 prosperity types, the richness and the fields. So if you online, if you've already done Appendix A for the richness, and you here who've already done it, you can go back now and do it for the fields. And the answers are in the book with explanation, but please don't just read the question and then go look at the answers. You'll get some help from that, but you'll get much more if you try to understand yourself what it is, and then look at the answers and see how you were right and how you were wrong. Now, there's also in Appendix B, and some of you might want to wait until after tomorrow's class to do this, but in Appendix B, there's a self-evaluation. So to go through here and like the little exercise we did yesterday with the prosperity types I did with one, that's explained here, and some more work that you can do, especially with someone who knows you. Now, some of you may feel ready to do this tonight, and some of you may want to wait till after my class tomorrow. So the chapters that I covered today, chapter 3 was covered in part 2, which is the nature of the fields. And then the temperaments of the people is chapter 4. And then what I just talked about here with this slide is a little bit about chapter 7. But there's far more material in those chapters than I was able to cover. Then for tomorrow's class, if you would like to read that ahead of time, is chapters 5 and 6. So that's what I'll be covering tomorrow. And again, the book goes in much greater depth with especially for what happens when you go into the wrong field, with a lot of specific historical examples. So again, thank you very much. And whatever good you found in this presentation is from Shastra and Srila Prabhupada and our Acharyas and my esteemed co-author, Dr. Urmia Devi. Whatever bad was in this presentation is completely my responsibility. So I hope you can take the good and leave aside the bad. And we do have some more copies of Pure Dharma if you're interested. And we also have we've sold out of the mantra book, but we also have some copies here of Krishna Meditations, which we're going to be teaching on Sunday. And that's how to find Krishna in every step of your life. In your breathing, in the sunlight, in your brushing your teeth. How to see Krishna in everything. Again, thank you.
Yeah.